Welcome to Let's Talk Apps number 5. My name is Andre. I'm the CEO and founder of Admiral Media. Guess what we do? We have something with performance marketing in our portfolio. And with us, we will have a really amazing crew on stage today. We actually have almost 200 signups this time on this session of Let's Talk Apps. I'm really blown away by the numbers. The interest in this topic of Black Hat ASO is certainly something we have to talk about. We also will talk about advanced ASA, but to discuss such unusual topics like Black Hat ASO, we have decided that we need to bring someone from the industry who is super famous. Steve P. Young will join us today and share some of his fresh ASO insights. And walk you a little bit through tips and tricks, what you can do to increase your organic reach. On the other hand, we will have my colleague Juan. He will talk a little bit about search ads and how you can win more users through paid acquisition. So I think this plays really well together. And with this, before we kick it off, these webinars are only possible when we have a lot of viewers, obviously. So if you see something interesting, spread the word, help us gaining more viewers. Share that you heard about new things on Let's Talk Apps. And with this being said, let me welcome our moderator, Pablo Perez, our Director of Performance Marketing at Admiral Media, to take it over. So what else can I say? Enjoy the show.
Thank you very much, Andre. And let's welcome to stage to Steve and Juan as well. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm good. Andre, thank you for that intro, man. I was going to think like you had to bring a real gangster to talk about Black Hat ASO strategies. So I'm here to kind of reveal some things from that end too. Thanks for having me, Pablo.
Thanks for joining us. Juan, how are you doing on your end?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Andre, as well, for that introduction. Thank you, Pablo, for having me here as well. And as Steve shared, I'm really excited to share some updates on my end as well, which in this case is Apple Search Ads. So yeah, really excited to begin with this.
It's great to have such expertise on the table today. So I really encourage you guys from the audience to share where you're from, which company you work for, what roles you're involved in or performing in your companies. You can also drop any question that you might think of in the comments. We will try to cover some of them, and the ones that will remain unanswered after the session, we will try to also tackle them. So we will follow up with some answers. And you can also reach always to Juan and Steve on their LinkedIn profiles, right? So session looks quite juicy today, right? ASO and ASA techniques and strategies, and as Andre was saying, so let's kick it off. Let's wait no more. So Steve, if you want to share your screen and run us through your content.
Yeah, let's go. Somebody's gonna have to bring up my screen into the stage.
Yes. There we go.
There you go. All right, here we go. All right, the first thing I'm going to talk about now, here's what I believe. Black Hat ASO is a necessity these days, okay? Run at your own risk. I'm not telling you to do it, but the main things I want to talk about and kind of give you guys some insights and why I like talking about this, Pablo and Juan, is I've got firsthand experience that the big guys are doing these exact strategies. And so for you indie app developers, startup founders out there, to have a fair playing game, you need to know at least what they might be doing. So I'm going to break down keyword installs. I'm not going to recommend any services. You guys can Google it and figure it out yourselves. But the big ones are keyword installs for iOS and Android. Okay. Be careful with the Android side. It is very tricky and Google will just take you out if they notice anything funny. But essentially what you're doing is driving installs by keywords, hacking the algorithm. I don't believe all the white hat ASO strategies I will talk about, that I've talked about on our YouTube channel, they're great. Optimizing the title, optimizing the subtitle. Those are going to be the primary things that you want your primary keywords in. But without a little bit of a push, I don't feel like you're giving those keywords the best shot that you have. And so really pay attention to these campaigns, the install campaigns, and think about it, because if certain apps are coming up and you're like, how am I getting beat? It's most likely these type of strategies. Now, people do buy reviews and ratings too. I would probably tell you not to do that. Apple's and Google are getting really, really smart about this stuff. So I would avoid this if I can. And there's some way better strategies that I've shared in the past that'll get you more white hat reviews and ratings versus actually having to buy them, right? So be aware of this, because Google and Apple are very smart about this. They'll most likely delete it. And the worst case scenario, they'll actually remove you from the app stores if they see you doing that. But I want to highlight these things because I want you guys to know what the big guys are doing as well. Pablo, I'll pause here if you got anything to add on here.
Yes, I was muted, sorry. Actually, that's a great comment, right? So no one wants to risk their own app, right? So do you have any safest store to use Black Hat ASO strategies? Maybe Google Play, App Store, Huawei, or any other? Or
yeah, so I'll give you guys a little trick, okay, that I've been using for years. Okay, I talk about this campaign called the App Advice campaign. It's apps gone free. It's essentially making something within your app for free. So typically a lifetime offer has the best results. Pablo, we did 100,000 downloads, making our lifetime offer for free for a client of ours. For our own app, we did about 20,000 downloads, making the lifetime offer for free. So if you really want to run these type of campaigns, run it after a burst campaign like that. They become harder to detect, and then you're creating a wave, and then you can ride that wave right underneath through a Black Hat ASO strategy.
love that insight. Thanks for sharing.
I'm giving away all
And
my
I liked
tricks,
even more. And I liked
Just for you
even
guys.
more the no vendors related comment. You're not here to sell anything. You're here to share really nice and interesting content.
I don't want to. Oh, no, I don't want you guys to be like, hey, Steve told me to do this. Steve told me to go this. And then like, no, I didn't tell you to do any of that stuff. I'm just telling you what exists in the world. All right. Let's get into the white hat stuff. Now, look, if you want to maximize your US ranking, Apple has a link and you guys can all check it out. You can do some Googling around. But the US App Store indexes 9 different localizations. That means you have 10 different localizations to play with. So as I'm talking about these keyword campaigns, I'm generally running. Okay, let me rephrase. I've heard it is best to run these campaigns on keywords that you have in their title and subtitle. So typically what I do to try to maximize it is I will pick Spanish Mexico, which has been around for a long time, and I will have the main keywords. I'll have a different title and subtitle, and same with Vietnamese. So I'll pick, let's just say for sake of simplicity, I have 10 different keywords and phrases that I'm going after. There's 10 different localizations. I'm going to put the title of those keywords in all these localizations. So if I'm going after meditation, it might be in the US. If I'm going after sleep sounds, it might be in the Spanish Mexico title. And then if I'm going after relaxed melodies, as an example, I'll put it in the Vietnamese title as well. And I'll give you an example right here for one of our apps. And this is the US ranking right here. You can see I'm going after different keywords here. And then the Spanish Mexico, I'm going after different keywords here as well. So that's what I mean by having different titles and subtitles to help support your US keyword rankings. Now, if any of these markets are big for you, then don't use them. Put the native language in there. Okay. That's higher priority. But if you're trying to give up a certain localization, then put English keywords in the Vietnamese title and subtitle and keyword field to help your US App Store rankings. And we have data that we know for sure these exist, because when this came out like a couple of years ago, we were testing it very frequently, and we're able to get index for keywords that are only used in the Vietnamese localization, as an example. All right. Cool.
Great. Yeah, I'm going through the questions from the audience that they shared before the session. So please feel free to drop any new questions, but this kind of relates to your slide here. And the question is, could cross-localized keywords compromise an app's visibility?
I don't think so. I mean, what I've seen on my end, Pablo, is, and if I think this is the way they're questioning is, so let's just say I have sleep sounds in the US subtitle, and then I have sleep sounds in the Spanish Mexico title. I've actually seen that increase rankings without any Black Hat AO strategies for our apps. So this is, I don't think it'll hurt you.
Okay, got it. Good to know.
And no, it will not just be for the US market, but we'll focus on that. Okay. Juan, you want to jump in here to tee this up?
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I wanted to do a little introduction on one of the blue oceans in this environment, which I'm pretty sure that some of you have heard of it already in some networking sessions. But iPad turns out to be one of these environments where most of advertisers are forgetting about. And actually, if you take into consideration the type of app that you are promoting, in this case, for example, you have an educational app or actually utilities app, this probably is going to be one of those good shoots that you can give. So don't forget about using this environment in your campaigns. You need, of course, special production and special builds, special versions from your app. But let's talk about numbers. I think it's better to go into actual results, and this is where Steve comes in. So Steve, please.
Yeah. So just to reiterate what Juan said too, I've been calling the iPad the blue ocean of the App Store because ASO is easier. You can target your ASA campaigns for just iPad only. And obviously not everybody needs a phone, right? But not everybody needs an iPad. So conversion rates are a bit higher on the iPad side. Don't believe me? Well, here we go. So iPad is the blue ocean. You can see this is one of our clients that we've been helping. You can see their sales by device, by iPad growing. And we reached over 100,000 in sales a month just on the iPad alone. Here's another client that I pulled the 2023 data on, and you can see sales by device. You can see iPad brought in 1.4 million, whereas iPhone brought in 600,000. Kind of like when Juan said, these are educational apps, so great for kids type of stuff. Great games, really good too. Certain AI apps we're testing, but entertainment type of apps would work really well. And utility apps, so like think note-taking, journaling apps might work really well on the iPad. The ASO is a lot easier for the iPad stuff, and the rankings are different. Okay, cool. And so I'll give you the downloads too by iPad. You can see iPad is winning, and then I'm going to break down this. So let's take a look at the numbers really quick. So we have this app that's making 2 million a year, roughly. iPad, 1.4 million in sales, about 300,000. Doing quick math, that's about $5 per download, right? Whereas the iPhone, you have 600,000, about 184 downloads. That's roughly about $3 per download. So you can see the conversion rates, and that's what we've typically seen, that the conversion rates on iPad are a lot higher because, like I said, not everybody needs an iPad, so they have a little bit more spending power on the iPad version. And for one of our clients, we're only running iPad ASA, and we're doing really, really well on that. We're spending $10,000 a week, by the way, just on iPad ASA because it's so valuable. And that's all we're doing. We're not even focused on the iPhone. Now we're targeting all these different markets on that end, but that's why I really like the iPad version, because there's some things I can do on the ASO front, and then you can separate your ASA campaigns by ad group. You have to do it by ad group, but I would probably do it on a campaign level, just targeting the iPad devices as well. And Pablo, if I may, I'm going to skip real quick because, I'm used to hosting too. So I'm going to take over a little bit. So the 9 different localizations that somebody asked in the comments below, it is all, Joe, it is all Apple mandated. So even Canada, they have English, they have French, Canadian. A lot of different countries have different localization. The US just has a lot more than other countries, but Apple decided these localizations will help the US. We didn't have anything to do with it. So there's a link on an Apple that I can send out your way, but essentially has all the different localizations. So this is directly from Apple as well. Cool. All right, Juan.
Right. So did I get it right? So we don't have any other localization available, right? So those are the nine ones we have for the US, or can you choose out of from like 20 more, for example?
I wish, Pablo. That's the 10 that I know. Okay. Unless you guys know some things. I know certain people way back in the day said like US, Australia, or English, Australia, English, UK help the US. I don't think that's the case anymore. It is those 9 that help. And it is those 9 that we especially utilize, especially for clients where their primary target is the US. Now, I know Germany is one that we're focusing on too. So you guys can look at Germany as their own localizations, but I could even pull up the link now that I'm not sharing it if you guys really want to see it here. So here, you guys want to bring my screen back up, I will show you guys. So to you, Joe, this is where you can kind of find everything. So here you can see Germany or Switzerland has German, English, all this localization. And then the US has these 9 different localizations. It's from Apple.
Oh, nice. So, do you mind sharing that link with the audience in the chat?
Of course.
Afterwards.
There you go. Let's see if that works. There you go, my friend.
Cool. Do we see it? Yes, I see it. I guess the audience also sees it. There's also another topic before we jump into Juan's screen sharing and his topic, where you were sharing these sleep sounds screens in your screen, right? So we have a question that says, is it better to have a short app name like sleep sounds, or should I be trying to stuff more keywords in the name?
Johnny, good question. It worked really well in 2019 to have a very, very short name. I mean, with no black hat strategies, we're able to like climb the charts really big. So shout out to Jonas for giving me that tip way back in the day, but not so much these days. If I'm really trying to go all in on a keyword, I might just call it that, but I haven't figured out if like 15, if having the short name is better than a long name. So I usually just stuff it. But if I'm really trying to give it my best effort and give it everything I got, then I will keep it a short name with that.
Great. There's also a question from Gabriel. It seems that you started with these ASO staff analyses. And the question is, if I have a conversion rate of 11.2%, is that good enough?
Look, the conversion rate, it's all different. So it depends on what the calculation, what's a numerator or what's a denominator. Now, if that's the conversion rate from the App Store Connect, I'm assuming if that's the good one that you're talking about, Gabriel, then that's good because roughly I've seen 4 or 5%. If the conversion rate trial activation, that's really solid. So anywhere from 5 to 10 is good. Anything above 10% is really good. And then the next figure I would look at is trial to paid. So it really depends on what you mean by conversion rate, because a lot of people say conversion rate for different things.
Cool. And another one from, I guess we have some time, so we'll be covering a few audience questions now. New one from Leah. I guess it's related to prioritization and testing structure as well. So she started working on a new project at the iOS English US Meta, and its cross localizations are too old. Maybe you understand what that means. Should I optimize all the languages at once, so not to repeat, to repeat keywords and get confused later?
Yeah, Delia, there's no best practice. Like if you want to do it all at once, go ahead and do it because then it makes it easier if you have the time. What we typically do for our clients is do US and Spanish Mexico together and then move on to Vietnamese and Arabic. That's just because we're an agency and, you know, we need time to execute all this stuff. But typically US and Spanish Mexico are the one that I always start off with. And then we go into it. And then you can create a whole spreadsheet. We have a whole new tab on the spreadsheet where it says US title, US subtitle, Spanish Mexico title, subtitle, and you can sort of clearly define which keywords you're going for. That's what we did for one client where the iPad sales were going up. We kind of had that spreadsheet. So we knew which localizations, and that's always going to change too, right? Because if you try to go after that keyword and it doesn't move, I might try a new keyword and put a different keyword in the US title, subtitle, and all that stuff. So that's always going to be ever changing. So I think if you have the time, go ahead and do it. You don't have to, but you know, I'd start with the US, Spanish, Mexico at a bare minimum.
Great. I'm taking notes for our clients as well. Thank you very much. Another one from Anas. I see that most businesses focus more on App Store than Google Play. Does it mean that users have more engagement on iOS? what do you think is harder, ranking an app or on Google Play or iOS using Blackout or Black Hat ASO?
Yeah. So we talk about App Store a bit more because the revenues are just going to be higher, and the conversion rates from actual paying. So when I say conversion rate, it's people who are paying. It's going to be a lot higher on the iOS side of things. So we tend to focus a little bit more of our campaigns on iOS, but that doesn't mean that Google should be completely ignored. So ranking an app on Google or iOS, look, I've always found that iOS was a bit easier than Google because I just think Google's a lot smarter. They've been in the search game for a long time, but it really depends on the keyword and really depends on the app. Certain times we've been able to like rank really number one for a brand new app on Google Play. And then on iOS, we're like in the 30s. And then this is the US, and it just doesn't move. So it really depends on the keyword. I mean, one little trick that we found works really well is if there's an app that is iOS only, if their brand is strong enough, you can sort of call it something similar on Google Play and vice versa. So if there's only an Android app, they probably have search volume on iOS as well, if they're a big enough brand. And so you can leverage these sort of other people's brands to get some downloads that way too. But yeah.
Great.
And Juan, I apologize. You can jump in and tell me to shut up anytime. All right. You know,
no, it's fine. I love when you speak, and I also see the audience loving your answers. They're pleased and thanking you in the messages. So let's do the last one before we swap to Juan. So this one is related to testing structure and also the length of the structure and how frequent we need to try it, right? So how frequently shall we experiment with titles and descriptions? What should be our key points and percentages? Change benchmarks to call it success or failure?
Yeah. So this is a little bit harder to answer. Okay. You should always experiment. But let's say there's just a keyword that you want, and it is the main exact keyword. As long as it's not meditation or sleep sounds and not super competitive, then I would say you just keep it no matter what, because ultimately relevancy is going to be the big thing that I focus on. If it's not relevant, then it just doesn't matter. Right. So no matter what, really, the way I like to experiment is, like I said before, put them in the title and subtitle or short description, wherever you want to put it. Give it a little bit of sprinkle with a black hat ASO. And then if it moves, great, you're there. If it doesn't move, then try out new keywords, because without and I had to do this with my app, right? We built an app because we knew this keyword existed that had low difficulty according to our data. And so when I built it and I tried to launch it, I couldn't get it into number 3. I got as high as number 3, but then fell. So I was like, okay, I needed to pivot and find new keywords. And so I would pivot and find new keywords. And now that app is making about $3,000 a month just automatically. And so you're going to have to pivot, but I would probably give it a month or two, just about a month, just to give it your best effort. And if it doesn't move, try a different keyword that has a little bit less competition. The more niche, and remember this, the more niche the keyword, if the traffic volume is at least 25, at least around 30, that's enough. But the more niche the keyword, the better your conversions, your paying customers are going to be, because, sleep sounds, as an example, is excellent. But do you want rain? Do you want thunderstorm? Do you want campfire? Do you just want white noise? I have no idea. But if you rank for white noise as an example, or brown noise or pink noise or any of these color noises, then you know what they're looking for. And if your title has just that, they're more likely to convert. And that's what we've seen is more niche apps. Don't be afraid of being niche, especially if you're in the beginning stages of an app and you don't have a huge paid marketing budget.
Nice. Super complete answer. Thank you very much, Steve. Great. I guess it's time to move to Apple Search Ads, right? So let's bring Juan's screens to the stage. And now it's all yours, Juan.
Thank you so much, Pablo and Steve. Afterwards, we can come back to questions, of course, depending on the level of detail that you want as audience. So far, let's begin with a basic topic comparing the 2 main solutions that Apple gives us as advertisers. We have the advanced version versus the basic version. I am not here to say which one is better for your business, because each business is different. Of course, it depends as well on the level of budget that you have available for use. So this topic of budget, by the way, is one of the limitations and main differences between the advanced version and the basic version. For the basic version, you can spend up to $10K per app per month. However, this is quite a decent amount of budget if we are willing to to increase your presence in the App Store. Of course, if you're looking more for customized targeting or even more dynamic creatives in terms of custom product pages, for example, then the advanced solution will be your preferred choice. There are a couple of differences as well in the integration that we have here between these two platforms. But I think the main difference is about that, like the automatization that you have in the basic versus the customization that you can apply in the advanced version. So actually, Steve, again, is one of the big references here to talk about his experience on basic Apple Search Ads. Later, I'm going to talk about a little bit of how the auction works in the advanced part, but let's let Steve to continue with how's been your experience, Steve, with basic Apple Search Ads.
Look, Juan, you did a great job looking at the differences between basic and advanced. So for my app, this is our app right now that I want to highlight. So I'm not just telling you guys to do something that I wouldn't personally do myself. So we had a client that's doing really well on basic, spending about $5,000 a month on basic alone, getting like a $3 cost per install, which is great, right? So for my app, I noticed I started on advanced, and I noticed from a sales and cost perspective that I can only pay about $1 per download. And so I was able to do that, but I only spent about $500 on that. And so I tried out basic, being like, and if you guys look closely enough, you'll see I started February 28th or 27th. So 28th, at the end of February, I started this basic campaign, and I didn't really pay attention to this app in March at all. And so I was like, hey, Apple, and this is what Juan said earlier, all we have to do with basic is put the app, tell where we're promoting it, which is, I put it just in the US, so you guys can see 1 out of 81 or 61, and then the maximum cost per install, which Apple recommended was $112. So I think I put $110. Now I only started with the 1,000 monthly budget, but I increased it to 3,000 because it was working so well. So let me give you the data in terms of how this $700, and this was just in March, ad spend did. So if you want to go to the next slide, so you can see the sales. Now it's hard to calculate, but you can see App Store search sales getting in 2,632. Now we do okay on ASO, and I didn't do anything else with this app. I actually just didn't pay attention to this app in all of March, but we had our biggest sales month in March, and the only thing that was happening was Apple Search Ads Basic. So what I've been saying is, if you don't have a brand and you don't have the time to always adjust the bids, and you need a really low cost per install, then think about basic. It might work for you. It doesn't work out for everybody, and there's very little control that you have. Like Juan said, you don't have negative keywords. You have no idea which keywords Apple is bidding on. They might bid on your brand. So if you don't have that brand and you don't want to double play Apple, meaning like I'm bidding on my brand and I have to pay Apple when somebody converts, then I would say really think about basic, because it worked really well for my app. It's working really well still in April, and it worked really well for another client of ours. And the last story I'll give you is that client that was spending about $5,000 to $6,000 a month, they went to another agency, neither of ours, by the way, but that agency turned on advanced and turned off basic, which ultimately might have been the right decision. But what we found is the advanced campaign had a higher cost per install and a higher conversion rate, but that higher conversion rate from trial to paid, or just install to paid, wasn't working out high enough for that install. And so basic was spending a lot better and getting us the ideal cost per install that made sense from an ROI perspective.
That's great. Super interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve, for highlighting these insights. Let's go back to Apple Search Ads Advanced. I see already a couple of questions in the chat, so it's good to have all of you here. Let's talk about how the bids work, because I think this will answer a couple of questions already in the chat as well. So Apple Search Ads will tell you in practice that, in theory, that they use a second price auction, meaning that in this chart of the left, you can see how we have 3 different apps advertising. And in this case, the bidder the B bidder, which is aiming for 2.8 for his tab, is going to win the auction with 1 cent more than the advertiser number C. However, what happens in reality, and you can actually deep dive a little bit more in the internet, how actually also the Google auction works. Everything related to search engine auctions work not only because of the bids that you are willing to pay, but they were also based on other factors that is called factoring irrelevancy, because the auction in the end happens in impressions. So we're not, this is not happening on taps or installs. This is happening because of impressions. So the auction happens based on the expected gain. This is something that several partners actually have already covered in different webinars in the past as well. And the important thing here is to understand that not only the bid will be important to win all the impressions. You need also to look at your tap-to rate metrics that you have in your keywords, and also the impression share, which is also an important metric to define if you're going to be a winner for a specific auction every time. Also, the budget will play an important role here, because if you run out of impressions, no matter if I have the strongest bid, if I run out of budget for that day, of course, I will lose the impressions. I will be giving them away. So looking a little bit more of how or what actions to do based on the impression share and where to increase bids and where not, we have created this chart for you, so you can just follow the tree of decision. For a specific X term, if you have your share of voice over 90%, then you will ask yourself, if I lower my cost per tap bid, does this affect the share of voice in terms of will it be decreased? If yes, then we recommend to keep the cost per tap to the minimum to maintain that share of voice over 90%. And if the answer to the previous question is no, then we recommend to decrease the CPT, because it's, you are willing to pay more than you actually are paying, so you can save that budget and use it in other campaigns. But what happens if this share of voice is not over 90%, which might be the case of most of generic campaigns and discovery terms and even competitors? Because we normally have over 90% in our brand campaigns, which is, as Steve mentioned in the beginning, they tend to be more long-tail keywords, which of course will give you more valuable users, and you will be paying less because it's already attached to your brand. So, but what happens if not, if the share of voice is not that high? So, is your daily spend higher than the daily budget that you have assigned? If it's yes, you're spending more budget than the one that you are willing to spend daily, then of course, if the profitability is fine for you in terms of not only cost per tap, but also ROAS, for example, or conversion rate to trials, or any in-app metric that might be more valuable for you rather than just the install or the tap, then feel free to increase the daily budgets, of course, with responsibility between your bucket limitation, let's say. But if it is not being spent, which might be also a very well common case, I'm not having 90% of the budget of the share of voice for this term, and I have good daily budget assigned, but I'm not spending it all, then what happens? Then you need to analyze where it actually makes sense to increase, if this term is worth increasing its CPT or not. And basically, you will need to analyze how the share of voice is being, where can be a metric to define if you have more impressions to cover. After you already understand if that metric or if that term specifically is giving you enough good performance for you. If that is the case, let's suppose I have a keyword and it's working really good for me and I have good ROAS, but I cannot scale it. I do this analysis of share of voice. We at Admiral Media can do this very automatically, just in case. But for example, we have here a couple of keywords that have a share of voice of 40%, 50%. And let's suppose I have a good ROAS for this. So that means that I'm having green light to increase the cost per taps and of course ensure more impressions for the auctions. So another topic that I want to talk about, we can jump back again for questions, of course, on this topic later, but just to finish, how Apple Search Ads Advanced can be a right tool for you if you are willing to test or to A/B test different product pages that you are developing in your App Store Connect page. So there is always an important question on how do I test this? What should be a right way to test the custom product pages? What I recommend from my experience, and it has worked good for me, is that I normally tend to identify which are those terms that I'm willing to try, focus on one specific custom product pages, and pick those terms and use them in another ad group, like testing between ad groups. That would be one of the approaches that you can use for testing custom product pages. So you have one ad group with a custom product page added and one ad group without it. Of course, there are a couple of other ways to do that, like creating specific budgets for specific campaigns. Let's suppose you have 50 per day for generic campaigns, but there you're spending on breeding all the 50. So you can test, okay, breeding is working with the default page. What if I create another campaign just for custom product page, focused purely on breeding, not the default one? Then you will have interesting insights and a very fair comparison to analyze afterwards. So custom product pages have shown here at Admiral Media important results, for example, for Petit Bamboo, a well-known app for meditation and mindfulness, where actually this case was published in the Apple's official website. We experienced in the past that by using custom product pages, we were able to lower the cost per acquisition by 25% compared to the default one by using the structures that I commented. Also, we saw an increase of 20% in the conversion rates. And finally, we saw, let's say, 20% of new customer acquisition driven by Apple Search Ads Monthly. So the CEO was very pleased with this experiment. He was a very kind guy, to be honest. And he quotes something that you might have already read. But yeah, the bottom line of this is make sure if you are using Apple Advanced, make sure you are testing correctly the custom product pages with terms that make sense for that, because otherwise you will be just creating discrepancies. And in the end, what we want is to land the user in specific places where they feel connected. They don't feel like this disruption in the flow. So,
hey, Juan?
Yeah.
Sorry. Question for you. I really love the strategy of creating a brand new campaign. I guess you said, is it a different campaign to test out a custom product page for the same keyword versus default? I do have a question from Angela about that. But are you keeping the same bid then?
It will be ideal to do so because it will be in fair conditions. Yes.
And then do you like to, I guess, do you have a preference between creating a brand new campaign to test out the custom product page or creating a brand new ad group? Have you seen a difference between the two?
Yeah, I see better comparison in the campaign structure, to be honest, because the ad group might be containing other terms and might be split the spend across others. If you're spending just one keyword in one ad group and you just duplicate that ad group, then the spend in the campaign will be still divided day over day. So you won't be very fair on the times of the day. And this is very important when the impressions are available during the day.
Got it. So I guess net, if I understood your answer, it would be create a new campaign.
Yeah, I would do so. Again, this is ways of testing. Of course, this is not like written stone workbook that you need to follow. Again, what we do here is to share insights from our expertise.
Yeah, but I love that.
Yeah, again, I mean, this world is very dynamic, and maybe tomorrow Apple shares another update and everything changes.
No, I'll tell you a story. We had a big client, by the way, and we created a custom product page, and we thought, dude, we were like, this is way better. It has all the best practices, kind of like your case study where it has breathing in the first screenshot. The screenshots look much better, and it failed but there's no real A/B testing, right? We just turned it on and we compared the week over week data, and it didn't perform as better than the default one, but I never thought to just create a brand new campaign and fully test it out. So I'm going to use that one. I'll let you know how it goes.
No.
Yeah, no. Now that you mentioned the case study of Petit Bamboo, it also reminds me of a case study that I'm about to share now in the comments related to ASO in Admiral Media, where we got 44% of search impressions and also 93% growth in search downloads in South Korea for a brain training app. So super interesting as well. And I see the audience has a lot of questions as well. I saw that some of them were already answered, as you mentioned, Juan, as well. Some from Oleg, for example. And there are many more from Oleg as well. I will be dropping, let me pick one from here. So this one says, can you recommend to use CPA cap, or is it better to tune CPT for keywords?
Great question. This will depend on how are you willing to pay your cost per install in Apple Search Ads. I normally recommend to add cost per action targets, like limits, bid caps, for competitors and discovery campaigns, because they tend to spend a lot and probably won't get you any valuable for that. But for tune keywords, make sure you have added for example, in a generic campaign, fair cost per install that you're willing to pay at campaign level, but make sure you also do optimizations and on keyword level. Try to keep it, of course, lower than the cost per tab, than the cost per action, target that you have set. Yeah.
Nice. And I also see some questions related to CPA and how the algorithm behind works. I feel the algorithm is quite inexperienced, Angela said. For instance, I used CPA cap in a campaign versus another with the same keyword without the cap. At first, it worked well, and afterwards, it stopped respecting the bid cap. So it seems the algorithm was bidding over that bid cap. Have you experienced that in the past, Juan?
Yes, Pablo. Some users, of course, will experience issues in Apple Search Ads algorithm. Maybe these cases are more frequent that we think of. But the ways to handle this kind of situations is create more control actions in terms of monitoring. For example, there are 5 things or maybe 4 things that you can do. You can manually adjust the bids in terms of cost per tab. Yes, the cost per tab of course keywords, but also you can adjust the target CPAs that you have added. I mean, if you have seen that it is not respecting the target cost that you're putting, then you can control it even better, like being more aggressive on the target cost. You can also add some negative keywords. I'm not sure if we're talking about in this specific case that you mentioned in the question for a discovery term or maybe exact term. But in any case, if we're talking about broad terms, make sure that we have added negative keywords to the campaign, because it will allow you to not overspend on things that are not useful for you. So also granular campaign structure must be something that you can apply. More targeted ad groups. This can help you to improve the control over match types and targeting. And finally, I always recommend to send feedback to Apple, because this is not the way that it should work. I mean, target CPAs are there to work, and if they're not, then of course it's something Apple needs to know.
Exactly, and it seems it's also a repetitive question from the audience. This is the one that we received yesterday from offline questions as well. And I also saw you laughing. I also saw you laughing before, Steve. So have you also experienced any algorithm going crazy situation where it wasn't respecting max CPA, match types, CPPs, and so on?
We don't actually use the max CPA as much. It's sort of something we just control our bids on a keyword level. So kind of like what Juan said on a cost per tap, we kind of just keep adjusting stuff. And I got this calculator just a spreadsheet that I'll share with you guys if you guys want to pull up my screen real quick. But essentially, this is how we adjust the bids. And so that's what I typically do. But I really like Juan's idea, especially if you're using a discovery or search match campaign. They can go crazy, and they have gone crazy. And I have seen it in some cases where they won't respect it. But essentially, if you have a cost per acquisition, it's all a math formula, right? Take algebra. That's what I tell my kids. Make sure you know algebra. It's the only thing that you're really going to need in real life. But if a conversion rate, so tap to install, and let's just say your cost per acquisition goal is 350, then you can just adjust the bids based off the conversion rate. I do look at the share of voice. I think that's a great tip from Juan to look at if it's profitable, can you increase the bid, especially if your share of voice is low. But if you're converting at 70%, and you're only bidding 140, well, you can technically just pay 245 to hit your goal cost per install. So that's how I adjust it.
And I think this is a very
You said your
effective way
kids.
to do so, yeah.
Sorry, Juan, come again?
No, I was saying that it seems like a very good way to keep control on the bits that you have and analyze if it's worth increasing or not. So yeah, good.
And
good
before they
points.
ask, no, I'm not going to share this link. That's it. I built it. It's an easy math for you. Build it yourself. All right.
Cool. And you said to your kids, algebra is a must. And if they want to follow your path, I would say a nice flow on stage will also be needed, right?
That's right.
There's also another question. Let me remove your screen from here.
Excellent.
Also coming from Oleg, this one is for you, Juan. Why the app may not get impressions from Apple Search Ads keywords despite of a high max CPT bid?
This is a question 100% related to impression share. I think if you have maxed out those impressions and you're stronger than your competitors and you're spending maybe not the full budget that you have assigned, like you have everything well set and you're not getting more impressions, probably there are no impressions available for that term. So this is something that although you're bidding very strong, you need first to analyze how it's been the impression share for this term. And if it is too high, then you have more room. If it is not too high, then what I would do is to try, I would run a little experiment for that specific term if the impression share is not at 90% or something, by trying to get little variations of that term. I think that would be a very nice approach. Maybe, I know this is not the exact term, but maybe that way you can find out some stuff that you might be missing with the current structure. But what I'm encouraging you to do is analyze and test. So I think that will help you.
Yeah.
Great.
Andre put a good comment. Apple reserves impressions for everyone else. You can never get 100%. What I would also do too is what we've done in the past one, because we had this happen to us, is we created a brand new campaign and we put a custom product page with that keyword. So all the spend, it was a big client. We couldn't mess with the main screenshots, right? And so we're going after, let's say, photo editor term, and we had it in an exact match campaign. It was not spending at all because all the competitor keywords were spending. I didn't split them up. Maybe I should have. But then when we moved it to a new campaign and put an ad group and gave it the CPP with photo editor as that first screenshot, it finally started spending. It was still more expensive than the competitor keywords, but that's where it finally started spending. So like Juan said, if it's a no, then think about Oleg putting together a custom product page to see if you can get some of that impression. And just that custom product page, that first screenshot should have that primary keyword. And then relevancy. Maybe it's we've experienced this too. Maybe it's just not relevant, and Apple's just saying this keyword is not relevant to you. So play around with the title too. Like I would say title and subtitle, play around with that. See if you can trigger the algorithm to give you a little bit more impression share.
Exactly.
I'm loving this Q&A section, but everything comes to an end. So let me bring the last two questions on stage. This one is super interesting. Maybe for you, Steve. Hi, ASA should be managed by the UA department or by the ASO department?
Oh, that's a great question. What do you think, Juan?
Great question as well. I think UA department should take care of that because they have more experience on auction system and so on. But in the end, ASO people are more involved with what's happening in the App Store itself. So I think there has to be a synergy between those two departments. Yeah. They both have to put their grain of sand, as we say, for both ends, so you can create a consolidated structure.
Agreed. I think the UA should be aware because you know all the cost per installs and how that translates to and the ROI of all the other ad channels. But ASA does inform ASO. And I know another question was, does ASA help ASO? I haven't seen it work unless you've seen something, Juan, because I got super aggressive on the main keywords I have in my title on an ASA and just didn't move. And I was actually not indexed for this keyword. And so I thought maybe like maxing out would help me get indexed. It didn't help. But anyways, ASA informs, because if you see a high conversion rate keyword and you'd not focus on it on an ASA perspective, like focus on it. So they should help inform each other too.
I'm also a big believer of synergy between those two, regardless how you structure it in your team. And this is a question that will have an open answer. That's actually a very open question. So we will be answering it maybe in the next sections or sessions of Let's Talk Apps in the future. And I also encourage you to reach out to Steve, Juan, and me on LinkedIn. We will be more than glad to help you, Monique, on that one, and the rest of the audience as well. I really enjoyed the session. How about you guys?
It's awesome, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it went very fast actually, but
yeah, I would go longer. It's not. It's my fault. We're going
fine.
short because I have to drop off my son soon.
I know. It's
That's
just kidding, but actually it was very fruitful. I think everyone here who listened to this session, I hope they bring home some insights and some ideas to test. So thanks for everyone for being here, and thanks of course Pablo and Steve.
And also thanks to the audience for asking such engaging and interesting questions as well. Let me bring Andre to the stage as well to make a nice closure of today's session.
I can't really add a lot of value here, but I really liked what you guys shared. It was quite insightful also for me because I'm not day-to-day in the job anymore, right? So I really appreciate the openness here and that you took the time to share something with the audience. Steve, to the audience, thanks for asking so many questions. It's amazing. I love this engagement. Keep it going. And if you took something away, please, as a reminder, post about the Let's Talk Apps sessions. We need more people like you. We want to have this exchange with more people, and we are really looking forward to the next session. Join us again, guys.
Thanks, everyone. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.